there's this firestorm that is occurring between Nancy Pelosi and Kevin McCarthy. And we could probably play these kinds of clips all day long because Nancy Pelosi is always quipping and saying something nasty about somebody. And let's be fair, McCarthy is perfectly capable of that as well. I have always seen McCarthy as kind of like this California guy who probably was a stoner when he was growing up and then somehow found his way into Congress and somehow became the House Minority Leader. That's always the way I've seen him. I don't see him as a particularly deep thinker, but apparently he's a very good strategist. So we will see in 2022 if that is true. So Kevin McCarthy says he wants to investigate all of the stock trades made by Nancy Pelosi, where she made millions upon millions of dollars or saved millions of dollars if the Republicans take over in 2022. So again, McCarthy said that if the Republicans take over in 2022, and really it's kind of a win, they take over the United States House of Representatives, and then Kevin McCarthy would become the Speaker of the House. His first order of business, he said, is to investigate all of the really very, very suspect stock trades made by Nancy Pelosi and her husband while she was Speaker. So remember, if you're Speaker of the House of Representatives, you get to decide which bills pass. And so if you pass a bill that decides to regulate a tech industry or to engage in a bill that is requiring data privacy, that could easily affect a lot of tech companies. And guess where those tech companies are largely located? In the San Francisco Bay Area, where Nancy Pelosi represents. So Nancy Pelosi's husband engages in regular stock trades and has been for years, that just happens to trade stocks just at the right time. Just at the right time. And by at the right time, what do we mean? Means that he trades those stocks right before a bill passes in the United States Congress that might affect the company whose stock he might own. So in other words, he sells that stock. So he saves millions of dollars because that company's stock would potentially go down. So he's using this inside information that he has. And where is he getting it? Is he reading it from the Wall Street Journal? I don't think so. All he has to do is talk to his wife. It's pillow talk, right? They're in the same bed together. It's hard to believe that that would be the case with Nancy Pelosi, but they're in the same bed together. And I'm sure he's saying, hey, honey, I own this stock in Google. And my understanding is that Google's stock might be affected because you might pass a data privacy law. Do you plan on passing that data privacy law where the individual gets to have and retain ownership of their data and opt out of any kind of collection or organizing or ownership of the data by anyone other than you? And that at that point, she's like, well, no, we don't plan on doing it. Okay, well, then I'm not going to sell the stock. I'm just going to keep the stock. And then the next day, there's a story that breaks in the Wall Street Journal. Nancy Pelosi comes out against the regulation of data. So therefore, the companies like Google can continue to operate the way they've been operating, in which case the stock goes up, and her husband and Nancy Pelosi do just fine. So Kevin McCarthy says that's the first thing he wants to do, is to investigate all of this nonsense that has been occurring in that marriage with respect to stock trades. And so here is Deneen Borelli. She's a talking head on Fox News speaking about this particular issue. We have that clip, and here it is.
But House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy is now saying if the Republicans take back control of the House in the midterms, that they will prioritize investigating Democrat fraud and abuse, including suspicions of insider trading by House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's husband. The House Speaker is saying they are doing things within the letter of the law. They're also they would say that they were going to look into Hunter Biden, too. What do you say to all of this?
Well, first of all, I think the timing of Paul Pelosi's investments are questionable. We're talking something like $11 million in big tech stocks and call options just before the House was to vote on several bills aimed at reining in big tech. So this is a matter of ethics and a matter of accountability. So I think there should be investigations.
Of course there should be investigations, because this is exactly what upsets the American people from all parties, by the way. And I want to make sure that the podcast listeners understand where I'm coming from on this issue. I don't care if you are a Republican, an independent, or a Democrat. If you are profiting off of insider information as a result of your public office, and you are giving that information about policy changes, significant policy changes that might affect stocks, and you're telling your spouse or your significant other or your stock trader, then you need to go to jail. And the problem is that the American people, by and large, agree with this. They agree with what I just said, but there never seems to be any accountability on the Democrat side. It only seems to me that it's only Republicans who have a tendency of getting in trouble, as they should if they did something wrong. But this is the Speaker of the House, and everybody's afraid of her. Everybody's afraid. And I'm convinced, and here's some insight, podcast listeners, I'm convinced they're afraid of Nancy Pelosi because she'll sick big tech against you. She will. She'll sick Twitter against you, YouTube, Facebook, all of the big tech companies, and make sure that they ruin your reputation or basically deplatform you or whatever it takes to get rid of you. I'm convinced that she has that kind of power, and that's why no one wants to take her on. Well, McCarthy has taken her on. They're both from the same state, after all. And so we would go from a House majority leader who is from California to a House majority leader who's from California, but one's a Democrat, one's a Republican. Well, here's PBS reporting on the Kevin McCarthy comment that he wants to investigate Nancy Pelosi. PBS is reporting, and of course, PBS is a public station that exists only because we, the taxpayers, are paying for it. So it's basically state news. So Pelosi calls McCarthy a moron. We have that clip, and here it is.
In the day's other news, the CDC reported that 2/3 of all U.S. counties are now COVID-19 hotspots, where even the vaccinated should resume wearing masks indoors. In response, the Pentagon and the Department of Homeland Security ordered all employees to mask up. The U.S. House of Representatives did likewise. But Republican leader Kevin McCarthy sharply criticized the move, and Democratic Speaker Nancy Pelosi was overheard reacting, quote, "He's such a moron." The two party leaders kept up their war of words later at separate appearances.
To say that wearing a mask is not based on science, I think is not wise, and that was my comment. And that's all I'm going to say about that.
This is just about more control. This is just the beginning of a set, because school's going to start coming back. They're going to shut school down again. This is about control.
So Pelosi never really addressed the whole stock trade issue. She just went right to the masks, because McCarthy did say, in addition to the stock trade stuff with Pelosi, that he thinks it's absurd that members who are vaccinated should still have to wear masks. Members of Congress, that is. He believes they should not have to wear masks because, after all, that's the whole point of a vaccination. If it really is a vaccination, then it should work. And that's why we call it a vaccination, in which case McCarthy's point is, why should those of us who are in the United States Congress who are vaccinated still wear masks? Well, in addition to that, he said that if he becomes the Speaker of the House, which he's likely to next year, that the first thing he's going to do is investigate Pelosi's stock trades. And of course, Pelosi came back and said, well, he's a moron. She called McCarthy a moron. And then in addition to that, she went right to the mask thing. She wouldn't even address the stock trades because she knows she's dirty. Everybody knows she's dirty in this particular respect. And this is a problem in America, because when you have a whole class of citizens on both sides, right, Democrats and Republicans, blue-collar Democrats, blue-collar Republicans, who see their elected leaders, some of them, not all, some, getting very wealthy off of insider information, it causes them to lose confidence in our system of government. And there has to be equal prosecution. There has to be equal prosecution of Democrats and equal prosecution of Republicans.